All right, what is going on, everybody? In this video, I'm going to explain step by step how to buy land without using any money. Okay. Now, I want to give a really important disclaimer. Okay. This is for how to not use money to actually purchase the land itself. Okay. You still need to put some money into marketing, whether that's going to be direct mail, which is the most effective. Okay. Or cold calling or texting. You still have to put some money into marketing. Okay. What we're going to talk about now solves really the biggest issue, which is how to not put money into the actual pieces of land. Okay. Which obviously cost more than marketing. So let's talk about that. All right. How we're going to do this, we're going to talk about three things. Okay. Number one, we're going to go over the three different strategies that you can use to acquire land without using money. Okay. We're going to talk about how to flip it using other people's cash, and then why land is easier to buy with no money compared to, say, houses. All right. Strategy number one, double closes. This is my favorite. Okay, I've talked about this a lot in other videos. This is very similar to wholesaling, okay, but it is slightly different. Let me explain the difference. The difference is that we're not assigning a contract. We're actually going to take ownership of the property, but then we're going to immediately sell it to another party. Okay, so we buy it and we immediately sell it. That usually happens within a few minutes or a few hours. Okay, usually the same thing. All right. Whereas with wholesaling, which is assigning a contract, you get something under contract, you find another buyer, and then you say, okay, I'm going to sign this contract over to you. You pay me a fee, an assignment fee. Okay. So this is slightly different. All right. Now, here's how a double close works. You first put the land under contract with the seller at a discounted price. Okay. You find a buyer who's willing to pay more for it. You close on the purchase first, then again, immediately resell it to a buyer without using your own money. Okay. The reason this works is because you can use the end buyer's funds to cover both transactions. Okay. Now, this depends on the title company they use. Some title companies will not let you do that. Some will. Okay. The ones that do, it's very easy. They literally wait till the end buyer sends all the money in, and then that pays for the one that you're going to buy. And then essentially you make the difference after fees, etc. Okay. If a title company will not let you do that, there are a ton of transactional funders that you can find. Okay, what transactional funders are is basically they fund double closes. We have one that we specifically work with where all they do is fund double closes. Their rates are extremely competitive. They charge about 1% of the purchase price, okay, or $1,000, whichever is greater, right? So like their rates are extraordinarily affordable. So either you can use them, or again, if the title company allows, you can do what's called pass-through funding, which is when you use the end buyer's funds to pay for the entire transaction. Okay. Now, to give you a very easy example, let's say you put a property under contract for 10 grand, find a buyer willing to pay 18. Okay. At closing, your buyer funds the entire transaction, right? Or use transaction funder. You keep 8,000 profit. Obviously, there would be some fees, et cetera, stuff like that, like closing costs, that would get subtracted. But I'm just giving you a large scale, easy math picture. Okay. Here's why this strategy is so powerful. I'm going to give you a few things. Number one, obviously, you don't use your own money, right? Which is huge, right? So instead of having to put, that money into the deal, you can just put it in the market, right? And grow faster. Okay. Beyond that, you can avoid assigning the contract, right? So listen, I've done like assignments, wholesale deals where I've assigned to someone else. It's very rare in land. It doesn't happen too much. It's not like a common strategy. There's kind of one-off deals I've done where I have done that, right? But the problem is this, is that when you do an assignment, the seller can see your assignment fee. They know how much you're making. And sometimes that can cause issues, right? If they're like, oh, you're going to make this much money, right? Sometimes they try and renegotiate with you, want you to pay more. But when you do a double close, because it's two separate transactions, they don't see how much you're selling it for to the end party. Okay, so that's one important distinction, right? Now, the other reason why I love doing double closes is you can offer the seller more. So you're going to be able to close a lot more deals because with a different type of funding, which is called JV funding, which we'll talk about in a second, you typically need to be out 50 to 55% of market value to be able to find someone who's willing to fund that deal. With a double close, it doesn't matter, if you're at 90% of market value, right? The transaction funders that we use don't fund the deal, right? Because it's closing the same day. So you're going to close more deals because you can offer sellers more money, right? Which means you're going to be able to do more deals, okay? It's one of the fastest ways to flip land because what you're also doing is you're reducing your cash conversion cycle. So I know that sounds like a complicated term, but basically what it is like when you spend money versus when you make money, like how long does it take you to make it back? When you do a double close, because you're putting on the market, you're finding an end buyer, you save time from having to have it go through title, like when you're first buying a property, then closing on it, then putting it back on the market, then having to go through title again, right? All these steps are basically happening at the same time since both you buying and selling are taking place in the same day. So essentially, your deals sell faster, okay? It's very important to know. All right. Number two, seller financing. So this is a very interesting strategy, okay? It's not super common. It's kind of better for like cash flow, like passive cash flow. Nothing's like truly passive, but you know what I'm talking about? I would be very clear. I would not recommend this. If your goal is like, hey, I'm trying to, actively replace my income, right? Like build a supplemental income. This is a very slow way to do it. It is not a good strategy for beginners. It's also complicated, but I do want to let you know what it is to understand. Okay. So essentially what you would do is instead of paying full price for a property, you would negotiate with the seller to make payments on it over time, right? So I'll give you an example. Let's say a seller wants 20 grand, okay? They're not getting offers, they can't sell it, right? You offer to pay them 200 a month for 100 months, no money down, right? Or maybe you put money down, could be one of those things, okay? So now you essentially control the land without needing cash up front. So there's a few different ways you can profit from it. Number one, you can flip the contract to another buyer at a higher price. Okay, number two, you can sell the land with owner financing to a new buyer at a higher monthly rate. So like let's say, to give you simple math, you're under contract for 200 a month. Well, you can flip to someone else for 300 a month, right? And you make the spread, right? Or you can hold on to it, pay it off over time while it appreciates, and then sell it after those 100 months once you pay it off. Again, like this is why I don't think this is one of the best strategies when you're first starting out, is because even if you're essentially arbitraging the contract where you sell it to someone else with owner financing, you're going to make maybe a few $100 a month in cash flow. Like that doesn't do a lot. The reason that we flip land compared to every other real estate strategy out there is that you can just make a substantial amount of money on a flip. You can make 5, 10, 20. I mean, sometimes on larger flips, you can make 40, 50 grand, right? You can make more than that, right? And obviously, again, if you're doing this for financial gain, you want to make money, doing one deal a month where you can make an average of 10K is going to have a much bigger benefit to your life than doing these tiny seller finance deals where you make a few $100 a month in cash flow. It's like, it's not really, in my opinion, worth it, okay? Now, here's why sellers would say yes to this, okay? Most landowners, they don't care about getting the money up front if this is something that they've owned for a long time, right? It's like they'd rather just get some money, okay? And for them, it gives them some monthly income, right? Think about it. You got someone who's a little bit older, they're bringing a few $100 a month or something like this. They'd like that, okay? Also, if they're motivated, they'll take whatever terms, are going to make sense to them, okay? So it's one strategy that you can have in your tool belt. Now, there is another side where this can come in handy, and that's like bigger deals, like when you're doing subdivides, stuff like that, where you can do some pretty creative seller financing where it actually might make more sense. But again, if you're doing this to make money, right, you want to make a good amount of money, right? Doing double closes or JV funding, just doing normal flip where you're not doing seller financing is going to make more sense because you can just make more money per deal. Okay. Now that leads me to number 3, which is JV funding, joint venture funding. Okay. So what this is essentially when you partner with an investor, okay, someone who has capital, right, who puts up the money and then you split profits when you sell, right? Now, every JV funder is different in terms of the agreements. In general, right, because you're the one who's finding the deal and managing it, you're going to make more of the deal, right? So typical splits start at like 70-30. So you get 70% of the profit, they get 30, okay? There's some people where it might be 60-40 or 50-50, but in general, that's what it is, okay? Now, I'll give you an example. Let's say you find a piece of land worth 40 grand. All right. The seller's willing to take 15K for it. You don't have 15K. All right. You bring in a JV partner to fund the deal. So they would pay for the purchase price and the closing costs. You sell the land for 40K, and then you split profits with your partner. Each walk away with 10 grand or whatever. Right. It's an incredibly powerful strategy because, again, you don't need your own money, but you do need a great deal. Right. We'll talk about in a second. Investors love to put their money in the land compared to houses because it's a lot lower risk. Right. In addition, it's like, you got to understand, we're getting these deals at like half of the market value, right? So it's like worst case for investors. Like, let's say something goes terribly wrong. It's like they could sell it at break even and not have to worry about it. So it's a very low risk on their end. And then again, like for us, like you don't need to take out a loan or credit, or you don't need to have experience to do this. You know what I mean? A JV funder, it's not like getting a loan or mortgage. They're not going to like underwrite your personal credit or do anything like that. All they care about is, hey, do you have a deal that I can make money on? Right. And another thing too that's very helpful is that a lot of times the people who are funding deals, they're either land investors who have kind of leveled up, right, and have a lot of excess capital, or like they're true investors. All they do is like they just invest into deals, right? So they have a lot of knowledge that they can share with you on deals. They might be able to look at the deal and say, hey, actually, I think maybe we should do this, or maybe it's going to sell for this, et cetera. So they can kind of give you some essentially coaching in a way, right, which could be very helpful. All right. Now, this is very important, is that to get a joint venture funder, typically you need to be at 55% or less of market value, right? Because a funder is going to want to basically have it make sense that they should put their capital into your deal, right? And so if you're too tight on the deal, like let's say you're buying it at 70 and you're selling at 100, a lot of funders won't want to fund that because in their head, they say, hey, my capital is going to be better put to use on another deal where I can make a bigger spread, right? So just keep that in mind. Like when you send something in for a JV funder, like it's got to be a really good deal, right? It's got to be, a base hit. Again, something that, let's say you're buying for 20, you're selling for 40, buying for 15, selling for 40, right? But like, you're not going to get a deal that's buy for 30, sell for 40, okay? Another point that's important is that you're building relationships here. When you work with a funder, the goal should not be, oh, like I'm going to do one deal and never do it again. It's like, no, like they're providing a huge benefit to you and you to them as well, right? Because like you're giving them deal flow, which is like, they don't have that, right? Like they're not in the business of finding deals. They're in the business of funding deals, right? So like you're very important to them, right? Without you, that they're kind of shit out of luck, right? But they're also very important to you because they allow you to run the business without having to use your own money. You know what I mean? So it's a great strategy. Again, I really recommend this for those deals that are like really just killer deals, is do JV funding. And then for the majority of your deals, I'd recommend doing double closes because it's very easy to do this. Okay. Where to find these? Again, other land investors who want passive deals, right? So if you find other investors who are already active, they might want to start parking their capital in certain areas. Those are great. Okay. Facebook groups, real estate networking events. Okay. That's where you can find people, private lenders who specialize in land deals. Also, people in your network, right? If you have people, your family, your friends, colleagues, right? People who you know are wealthy people like to make money and they like to have their money make more money for them. Okay. So if you could show them a track record, hey, I've done these deals, here's how this works, you could probably get them to invest. And the cool thing is, a lot of times with people that you know in your network, you can actually negotiate better splits because listen, stock market on average returns what, 10% a year, right? It's like, well, if you can show them this where they can make 20% of the gross profit, they're like, oh wow, like, and especially in a faster time frame, right? Like we turn our properties in general 9 days or less, they're gonna be like, wow, that's like a really good return, right? So don't sleep on reaching out to people in your network. Okay, it can be a really great strategy. Now, again, what strategy should you use? Well, it depends on the situation. Okay, if you want to do quicker deals, right, with no money, double closing, it's the best strategy. Okay, again, it's going to shorten that deal cycle. All right, it's one of the best places to do it. If you want to build like long-term passive income, seller financing, right? Again, this is so important though. I would not start with that. Like it's more complicated. Okay, again, the cash flow is so small from it, so like it should not be your like first strategy. What you should first do is like come in, start getting a few deals under your belt, right? Do a few flips where you make 5, 10, 15K in profit. Do that. And then when you have a bunch of excess capital, right? So like you're starting to make a lot more money and you got more money than you need. Well, then you could go get some seller finance deals and then, basically owner finance it out to someone else and make a few $100 a month in cash flow and like stack those properties, right? Like that's a great strategy, but like don't start with that. It's a horrible idea to start with that. Okay, I want to make that very clear. All right. And if you've got great deals like those awesome ones, like where you're way below 55%, or less market value, JV funding is going to be a great option. Okay. Now, between these three strategies, you don't need to use your own money.